There's a topic in the appraisal world that is a little confusing for appraisers. Appraisers have been struggling with this topic, with this issue. Some think they can do it, some think they can't do it. There's really not been a lot of guidance on this topic to help the practicing appraiser. I mean, we've just kind of been left in the dark. There's not been much education on it yet. That's changing. There's not been any word from Fannie and Freddie on the topic. We're just kind of left in the dark, and it's somewhat a new phenomena. But we need some help. We need some guidance. Hello, help the practicing appraiser. What in the world am I talking about? Come on back and join the conversation and hear all about it. Hi, this is Bryan Reynolds. You're listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you as always by the great folks over at Appraiser eLearning. You need some education? Check us out at appraisereLearning.com. We have lots of classes, online, virtual, even live classes, and we've got conferences all over the place. So come join us in August at Val Expo in Las Vegas, and come back to Las Vegas in September at the Summit. And then the ACTS conference, that one's the one that moves around, will actually be in San Antonio in April 2025. But let's get back into the meat of this. Listen, this has been a struggle for a while, and what am I talking about? I'm talking about short-term rentals. A lot of folks call them Airbnb. That's like saying Coke. Do you want a Coke? When I mean, do you want a soft drink? Okay. So the proper terminology is short-term rentals. If you hear me say Airbnb, if you hear others say Airbnb, that's really what we are talking about, the short-term rental space. Can you, as an appraiser, appraise a short-term rental? I don't know. That's something that we haven't gotten a lot of guidance on. Do you know how to opine what the rental income is of that total asset? Should you even be doing that? Well, listen, I said we've had no guidance, and it's really a true statement. But guess what? Somebody just came out with some guidance. Thank you, Fannie Mae. And I have Mr. Lyle Radke on the program today. Lyle, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Bryan. Thank you for having me.
So listen, you guys just came out with a new policy update, and it actually had lots of stuff. And I'd really love to talk to you about all of it. Reconsideration of value, I think appraiser no-nos. But the one I really want to kind of, since I know I have you for a limited time, the one I want to really zone in on today with you is your policy on short-term rentals, because this is a very confusing area for the practicing appraiser. So in a nutshell, without me reading the update verbatim, can you just kind of give us an overview, a clarification of Fannie Mae's policy when it comes to short-term rentals?
Sure, Bryan. So a couple things to say from the outset is our quarterly appraiser update is not actually policy. So the policy is the selling guide. And you can think of the appraiser update as helpful information for implementation of the policy, but it's not binding, right? That said, in terms of short-term rentals, we do allow lenders to deliver loans that are secured by a property where the owner has expressed an intention to use it as a short-term rental. And we have guidelines in the selling guide as to how that needs to be documented by the lender. The income qualification is really not an appraiser problem in general. Like that, income underwriting is the lender's issue. There are some scenarios within this, I should say this one thing. We treat the short-term rental like an investment property, okay? And we don't allow short-term rental in terms of like owner-occupied or second home. That's not a short-term rental for qualification purposes. Short-term rental is an investment property. So all our investment property policies apply. And we have a table in the selling guide, which is called Documenting Rental Income from Subject Property. And then it goes through all the various scenarios of how you would document rental income from the subject property, right? The Form 1007, which is the rent schedule, figures prominently in that, but it's not the only thing. So there are other instruments that we require, and that might include tax returns in some scenarios. It might include lease agreements in some scenarios, right? So the 1007 is generally not a standalone. It's usually going to be taken in context of other income documentation.
I want to talk about the 1007 in a minute. We'll probably talk about it for a while. But before we do that, I want to just talk about developing an opinion of value of the real estate, right? The real property entrance. So let's talk about that for just a second. I'm going to try and share your screen, my screen here. And this is the Fannie Mae announcement, if you will, the update, I believe you called it. And I'm not going to read all this. Appraisers can grab this themselves. We'll try and put a link in with the below. But I want to focus in on this comment right here that's in this update. Note, when appraising a short-term rental for conventional mortgage lending, an appraiser must is a strong word, take care to only include the real property in the value, not the personal property or the business / going concern. And I think while appraisers really have some trouble with that, and I'll just tell you a personal experience. I was going down to Florida, went down to Florida and was looking at some condos to maybe buy as a short-term rental. And I didn't tell the real estate agent that I'm an appraiser. Didn't tell her I was an agent as well. She knew me as an investor. And we looked at a property, and most of the ones we looked at were furnished. A couple of them were unfurnished. And the ones that were furnished, many times, I probably would have got rid of all the personal property anyway. So as a potential buyer, as the investor, in my opinion, it really didn't contribute any value because I was going to just toss it all, right? But we did go look at one where the personal furnishings were actually really nice. The artwork on the wall, yeah, I'll use that. The couch was nice. The beds were nice. The kitchen table, the bar stools there. It had all the forks and knives and everything that you need for an equipped kitchen. And I said, does this one come? The price you're telling me that this is going for, does it include the furnishings? And she said yes, but the appraiser won't give that any value. And we as appraisers never give value. That's a pet peeve of mine.
She's pretty savvy. She got it exactly right.
Yeah, and I said, well, let me ask you a question. Are you telling me that the price that this is offered isn't inclusive of the personal belongings? You're telling me that if I bought one on the hallway down from me that's vacant, I'd be paying virtually the same price. And she said, oh, no. This one is going higher because of the personal belongings. I'm just saying when it's appraised, they will ignore that. So that's the fear that I have, that a lot of appraisers are out there because they probably have comparable sales that sold with all the furnishings in it. And while maybe some don't contribute value, many of them do. And you guys are buying loans that are secured by the real estate. So you're really wanting the value of the real estate only, not the personal property. Some folks call it FF&E.
We're not just wanting, we're demanding the value of the real estate, the real property.
So how are you seeing appraisers do it from your perspective? Are appraisers taking out the contribution of that personal property? Are they not taking out? Do you have a gauge on, whether they are or not? And what's your message to an appraiser listening or watching right now if they get a request to appraise it and they have those comps with the personal property?
Well, so Bryan, there are a lot of techniques and there are a lot of different scenarios, right? And I'll just share my own personal scenario. My siblings and I wanted to visit my parents, and I live a long ways away, and the kids are scattered all over the country. And so we decided we would get an Airbnb, and we'd all stay together in this house for this week while we're visiting my parents. So we got this Airbnb, and I grew up in a small town in the Midwest. So we're not talking about like condos in Florida. This was a 100-year-old house in a little village that it could be a regular residence, but somebody had decided to turn it into a short-term rental, right? And the house, from a practical perspective, physically the amenities were just a house, and the choice as to whether to make it a short-term rental or not was an individual choice. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different scenarios in which you might encounter a short-term rental, is what I'm trying to say. Now, in terms of techniques, how do you appraise only the real property and not the personal property? Well, you find comps that sold without personal property, right? That's one way to do it. You can also do interviews and find out how much the personal property impacted the negotiation. You can try and ask that question. It's not just the furniture, though. It's not just the furnishings. It's also the intangibles. So with an Airbnb or a short-term rental, there's an operating business potentially, right? And you cannot include the value of that business in the real property appraisal. So you have to somehow back that out. And one way to do that is to use a property with similar physical and legal characteristics, but that's not being used for the business purpose. So that's basically the answer, is you have to find comparables that represent. Now, I would say this: the value of the real property, in a lot of cases, is going to be the same, whether it's a short-term rental or not, because the physical amenities haven't changed, right? And the legal bundle of rights probably hasn't changed. Like, you've got two houses side by side. They're both physically very similar. They both have the same zoning and legal rights. And one owner chooses to do a short-term rental business from their property, and the other one chooses to occupy it as owner-occupied. The value for those two properties is essentially the same. The question, and if you don't find that through your analysis, you're probably not doing it right. If you say, well, this one, because it's an Airbnb, should be worth more, no, that's not correct. It should be worth the same, because what you're valuing is the real property, not the intangibles, not the personal property.
Yeah, and I want to make sure I understand this, and my audience understands this. You're saying from the perspective of the value of the real property, they should be the same.
Right.
But if you were asked to appraise the one that was the short-term rental as a going concern, then it would probably be higher, because you're opining more than just the real property.
So if you're going to appraise a going concern, you have all kinds of other challenges, right? That's not a real property appraisal. That's not USPAP standards 1 and 2. That's different standards. I don't even remember which ones, because I never paid attention to that, right? And it's different techniques. And
well, it would be standard rule 9 and 10 if applicable, because I'm not aware of any state that has a license for a business appraiser.
And here's the other thing, Brian, is if you look at the definition of value that's embedded in the URAR in our appraisal forms, it does not encompass going concern or business value. So you cannot use our form to do that. That's a very different kind of appraisal. You're going to have to create your own documentation.
Sure. So Fannie Mae is not in the business of buying loans that are valued from the perspective of the total asset. You want the valuation of the real property, the real estate only. And so that's why I really want to get the word out and communicate to appraisers, because your example of let's find comps that didn't have the personal property within the sale. I mean, that's great, but I've had appraisers come to me and say, well, that's impossible, because I'm in a tourist area and every property is selling fully furnished with all those amenities, every one of them. So that's a challenge with me trying to find comps that didn't. Well, okay, that is a challenge. But I think, Lyle, you'll agree they're going to have to figure it out because the value attributable to the non-real estate needs to be taken out if you're opining what the value of the real estate only is. Is that Fannie's
right.
position?
That's right.
Okay. So you mentioned the 1007. So so we're clear. We're in agreement that the appraisal community, the appraisal professionals, the appraisers, when they are appraising a property that's going to be sold to Fannie Mae, they need to make sure they're developing an opinion of the market value of the real estate only.
Yes.
Okay. All right, appraisers, you heard it. Be sure that's what you're doing. And if you're using comps that sold as short-term rentals and they sold as the entire going concern, you better have really good support as to why you didn't take out the contribution of that, unless there is no contribution, and you better have really good support to demonstrate there's no contribution for those additional assets. So we're on the same page there. I thank you for that. I do want to shift gears to that 1007 for a minute. Tell the listeners a little bit about, what the intent of the 1007 is, what they can and can't do with it. And I know from a USPAP perspective, USPAP doesn't care about forms, right? USPAP cares about you being competent or getting competent, being ethical, developing credible assignment results, and not misleading, not creating a misleading report. So they don't dictate the format or style of real property appraisal reports. But you guys, have a form and you have what you want, what you don't want. So that maybe USPAP doesn't care, but Fannie most certainly cares. So talk a little bit about a 1007 and what your expectations are when an appraiser utilizes that pre-printed form.
Yeah, I think I'd start with, first of all, a definition. What the 1007, what the bottom line outcome of the analysis that is represented in the 1007 is, it's an indicated monthly market rent. I'm reading that off my other screen, right, to make sure I get it exactly right. Indicated
Right.
monthly market rent. Okay, so if you're asked to use a 1007, that is what you're going to deliver, an indicated monthly market rent, nothing else. If you are asked to do something other than that, then don't use the 1007 to report it. Use something else.
So wait. Can't I just say, well, I've got one and, it doesn't really rent by the month. I mean, sometimes it does, but, normally it rents by the day or by the week or by 2 days. Heck, I've rented half a day. I haven't rented by the hour, although I've been asked to rent my place by the hour. We don't do that. But maybe there's a photo shoot. We had a cooking show in one of our Airbnbs. We get lots where they're like, we want to do a baby shower. We don't need it overnight. We just want it for a few hours to do a baby shower, right? Couldn't I just say, all right, I know Lyle said they want the monthly rent amount, but if I just say, okay, well, I've rented it out 20 days out of 30, I'll figure out, here you go, Lyle, here's the monthly rate. Does that work?
Well, of course not. So if you look at the form itself, it is set up very similar to the sales comparison approach, only it's a rental comparison approach. It's asking you to grid 3 rental comparables that were leased on a monthly basis. Now, what does that mean, leased on a monthly basis? Okay, that can be leased month to month. So every month you renew or roll over, right? Or it can be leased on a 6 month or a year or 10 years, but where the rental amount is fixed on a monthly basis, right? So that's what we're talking about, monthly rent. And that's what the form calls for. So you have to, I'm going to take us back to some fundamentals here. Think about your scope of work and what your scope of work is in order to develop the 1007 or to develop the content for the 1007 is what's prescribed in the 1007. So your scope of work is, I'm going to find 3 monthly rental comps. I'm going to grid those out. I'm going to make any adjustments necessary, and I'm going to use that data to conclude to a monthly rental, estimated monthly rental. Okay, there's nothing in there about nightly anything. I've heard some arguments that a nightly or a short-term uh, rental is not even actually a rental. Like the agreement you enter into is not a lease agreement. It's a different type of agreement. What we're calling for is lease agreements, right? What we're calling for is a monthly lease agreement. So we're being very specific here, and we're not allowing alternative methodologies. So if you say, well, I'll figure out the nightly rent, I'll take it times 30 minus my vacancy. No, that's not a 1007. Put that on some other document.
Dang it. Okay. All right. So let me go back if it works. Yeah, it did. I'm going back to your update, and the very last paragraph kind of talks about it. I mean, if you guys haven't seen this, get your hands on it and take a look, right? It says the 1007 was not designed for appraising single-family properties that are used for short-term rentals. And I'm going to skip all this, but look down at the bottom. It says, I'm just going to jump all the way to the last sentence. Form 1007 cannot be used to estimate the nightly rent for an STR. Cannot. Hello? You cannot use the 1007 to develop an opinion of the income attributable to more than just the real estate, by the way, other stuff, because some of that income is derived because it's furnished. You cannot use it on a 1007. You can put it on something else maybe, and we'll get to that question in a minute. You know, I ask appraisers all the time. I say, look, what is it important to you when you go rent a short-term rental or Airbnb? And they say location, number of bedrooms, proximity to the tourist attraction I'm going to, right? All those things, and that makes sense. I said, okay, is that it? I mean, what about if I had two short-term rentals side by side, and I said, you know, Lyle, your family trip. If I said, well, Lyle, I've got two side by side. One of them's got beds and TVs in every bedroom and a couch and a kitchen table and forks and silverware and linens for you. The other one's vacant. Which one are you going to rent? You going to bring your sleeping bags and camp out in the vacant one?
Farther, it's like, does it have internet service? Is the fridge stocked with drinks? Is it easy to pick up the keys? Like, are there towels, soap and shampoo? Is it clean? So all of these are hoteling services. They're not real property income.
Absolutely. And then once we get over that hurdle, I'll say, well, what if you look and it's got a 2-star review? You know, and most of I had one student say, no, it's got to be 4 and up, 4 stars and up. I won't even consider it. Well, then part of the income, part of the rent you're paying to stay there for the night or nights isn't just attributable to the dirt and the building they're on. It's attributable to all those various amenities of FF&E and the reviews and maybe the superhost status, or in your case, the 4 stars and up. All those things are important. So Lyle, don't go anywhere. I know I've only got a little time left with you, but I've got a lot more questions in particular around that 1007. And what if we have a lender saying, by God, I want this stuff on the 1007? Because listen, I am an appraiser. I'm faced with that. I know appraisers out there listening and watching right now are dealing with that on a daily basis. And times are lean right now. You don't want to turn down an assignment. You know, if I say I'm not going to do that, they're going to find another appraiser to do it. So I want your thoughts or maybe advice for the appraisal community out there of, since you guys have put this out, what is the appraiser to do, and what's going to happen to them if they do it anyway? What's going to happen to a lender if they do it anyway? Anyway, I want some thoughts from you on that in just a second. You know, guys, we've been talking about getting in trouble a little bit, and gosh, you might want to make sure that you have some tools to help protect you. You know, since 1978, LI Administrators and Insurance Services has been offering E&O insurance to valuation professionals all across the country. LIA applies superior customer service, exceptional liability education, unparalleled claim defense to serve well over 10,000 appraisers all across the country. They offer all kinds of insurance, commercial bond, general liability, cyber liability, and so much, much, much more. Guys, if you don't have a general liability policy, you really need to think twice about that. Visit liability.com to learn more about how LIA can protect you as well as your business. Thank you so much, LIA, for your continued support of the Appraisal Update podcast. We genuinely thank you for your support. All right, Lyle. So you're a practicing appraiser out there. You're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I get calls all the time to do this. And now Fannie's they're making it very clear. You made it very clear in your update. Do not use the 1007 to report nightly rents, nightly income. You made that very, very clear. Yes. So if an appraiser gets an assignment today and the AMC is saying, look, we want to know what the short-term rental income is, develop an opinion of that, and we want it on the 1007, what would you tell the practicing appraiser listening to this broadcast right now? What are they to do?
Yeah, so that's putting the appraiser in a pretty tight corner, right? So this is part of the scope of work conversation that USPAP envisions. The appraiser needs to be able to convey back to the client, I can give you a 1007, but Fannie Mae's instructions on how to do it are very specific. I need to use monthly lease comps, and deliver a monthly estimate of rent. I won't be giving you a nightly estimate, and I won't be using short-term rental comps. If you need me to assess the nightly fee, I can do that, but I can't put it on the 1007. I have to put that on a custom form or some other form of documentation. So I wouldn't necessarily tell the lender what they want. That's their decision, what they want, but you have to tell them what you can do. And the 1007 just isn't suitable for all the reasons we've talked about for analyzing nightly rent.
So that leads me to another question. You've just got a lender out there that says, this is what we've been doing, this is what we're going to keep doing. And they do find an appraiser out there. Maybe an appraiser hasn't watched this broadcast. Maybe they haven't read your update and know that this is a no-no now. It's very clear this is a no-no for Fannie Mae. And they do it. And the lender delivers a loan to Fannie Mae. And then you guys find out about it. What's the ramifications of a lender saying, we're going to just do it anyway, don't care what law says?
Well, I mean, we do post-acquisition reviews of the loan file, and if we find that the income has been incorrectly documented, then we have remedies such as repurchase that we might enforce with the lender. It's circumstantial, right? It depends on the exact circumstances, but violations of the selling guide are subject to enforcement by Fannie Mae, and we do aggressive or comprehensive sampling and review on loans that we acquire.
So this is serious stuff. I mean, you guys are taking this very serious. If you have someone ignore this update, there could be ramifications, both to the lender, the AMC, and I'm kind of hearing the appraiser.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, for appraisers, I don't know that this is anything we've ever strictly enforced. Like we don't see a lot of problems with this. But we do have some tools in the toolkit. If we would start probably with an educational approach, with the appraiser.
Well, there's no question appraisers are reporting total asset income on the 1007. There's no question about that. That's happening. It's happening all over the place. I get calls all the time. We get requests to do it all the time. And so I appreciate Fannie Mae's position to get the word out as to give the appraisal community some guidance, because honestly, Lyle, the appraisal profession has been pretty silent on this topic, and we need some guidance. That being said, I've got a new course coming out on short-term rentals. We're launching that in August. Right. And
one thing I would add to this is, well, first of all, there are other investors in the marketplace, right? So some of these loans that you're talking about, maybe they're not coming to Fannie Mae. Because we do have other controls on income. So it kind of makes it difficult for a lender to abuse this process, because the 1007 isn't a standalone, right? There's other requirements that they have to meet. But that said, even if the loan is not going to Fannie Mae, I would argue that it's misleading to use a 1007 in that fashion. So it's a USPAP problem in that you've said that the form is pre-printed. It says this is what I'm going to do. If I don't do that, then I am misleading, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, USPAP doesn't dictate the form format or style, but to your point, boy, you'd really have to mark it up and add a lot of it. I mean, you could appraise a hotel and put it on a 1004 form if you wanted to, but you'd really have to redact a lot and add a lot. I mean, just why would you do that? It's
Yeah.
silly, right? You're using
And
an
you run the further risk of what if that lender does turn around and sell that to Fannie Mae, and now you're in trouble with Fannie Mae, right?
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you giving some clarity on that. One of the biggest questions, and I don't know if you want to answer this or not, but one of the biggest questions out there and concerns of appraisers is I'm a residential guy. I do residential appraisal work. There's a lot of talk about this short-term rental being a business enterprise. Can I even do it? Can I appraise it? If I develop an opinion of the income, is that an appraisal? Thereby, I can't do it. Can I do it? Can I not? Do you want to give any thoughts on that, or you want to steer clear of that conversation?
I should probably steer clear of that. Like, I'm definitely not the expert on USPAP 9 and 10, right? Standards 9 and 10. That's
Yeah,
not my,
yeah.
not my
Okay.
expertise.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I've got some opinions on that. And listen, I've kind of changed my opinion on that a little bit, but I'm going to save that for another time. You want my opinion? Come take my short-term rental class. It's coming up real soon. Lyle, thank you so much for taking the time out and joining me. This has been insightful because there's a lot of appraisers in the dark. A lot of appraisers are like, well, I'm going to just do it until I'm told not to. You're kind of being told not to now. And so, your advice of, hey, tell your client, look, Fannie Mae has come out and said not to use this form for that. Maybe I can do it another way. Maybe I can communicate those results to you in a different fashion, but I can't use it on the 1007. And what I would do is I would send this to the client. Have you read the Fannie Mae update that's coming? This is Fannie Mae. It's not me. It's them. Yell at them, not me. So I appreciate Fannie Mae allowing you to jump on with me and give some clarity on this issue. If somebody wants to reach out and talk to you, what would be a good way for them to get in touch with Lyle Radke or a member of your team?
If you look at that newsletter, down at the bottom, there's a contact us link. And
Great.
just click on that contact us link and it'll allow you to contact us.
Well,
If you're trying to reach me personally, you send that through the link and they will get it to me. I work real closely with the people who are monitoring that
Great.
Intake.
And I know, Lyle, you travel, you speak, and that's one thing I do appreciate Fannie and Freddie and even HUD and VA these days. They come out and they present at events where appraisers can come right up and approach you and ask you a question. And I appreciate you folks doing that as well. When I was starting out in this business, you didn't have a face of Fannie Mae. You didn't have a face of Freddie Mac. And you certainly couldn't come up and have a conversation with them. So I do applaud all the agencies for doing that because a brand new appraiser can come up and approach you. And I do appreciate the willingness of you folks to do that. So that being said, where are you going to be next if somebody wanted to come track you down and see you live and in person?
Well, this fall I'm going to attend the Val Expo in Las Vegas, which I think is third or fourth week of August.
Yep, August 19th. Yeah, great.
I'll be at the RAC, it is Relocation Appraisers Conference, which is in Frisco, Texas, in October.
Yeah, I'll be there too.
Then I'll also be at the Appraisal Summit, which is in Las Vegas in September. So those are three that come to mind. I'm doing some other webinars and engagements, and a lot of those are virtual, but sometimes we have Q&A time built into that. And
Right.
Bryan, I don't know if you've mentioned this before in your podcast. I'm an appraiser, right? I've been a licensed, or I'm a certified appraiser, and I've been licensed for it'll be 30 years this fall.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
so I've been in your shoes, so to speak. I've experienced things from that side of the business, and I really enjoy. That's one of my favorite parts of my role is that opportunity to get out and talk with appraisers and to talk shop and swap stories and hear what they're experiencing and talk about risk management and share what I've learned at Fannie Mae, because I've learned a lot being here about kind of what's the function of the appraisal from the secondary markets perspective. How are we trying to manage risk through the appraisal process?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you for attending those events and being approachable. I've been to seminars and conferences and workshops even where I was just at one in Austin. In fact, for a short-term rental conference in Austin, and one of the first speakers, a very dynamic speaker, very great, but he's like, "All right, my daughter will be out here. I'll be out here for a minute, but I'm about to go get on my jet and take off," right? So you don't have the opportunity to go up and introduce yourself and ask questions and pick their brain. And you guys are always very approachable. So again, thank you for that. Lyle, thanks so much for carving out some time and joining me today. I know you're a busy guy and Fannie Mae keeps you really busy, but thank you again for joining us today on the Appraisal Update podcast.
You're welcome, Bryan. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Appraisal Update podcast brought to you by Appraiser eLearning. I hope this was informative. I hope it didn't make you too mad. But guys, we've got rules, we've got guidelines we have to adhere to. And if you have a client, an AMC, someone asking you to do something that you just simply can't do, you have to say no. You have to have the courage to say no. And hopefully we have some lenders, clients, and AMCs watching this broadcast, and they know they're going to have to change their policy right quick to make sure they're not asking appraisal practitioners to do something they really shouldn't be doing. Until next time, please make some money. Make that money. Take you a little vacation, go to the mountains, go to the beach, just read a book in your backyard, whatever it takes to stress down a little bit. Make some money. And until next time, happy appraising.
The Appraisal Update podcast is brought to you by Appraiser eLearning.